And we are now joined by Florida A&M head coach Willie Simmons. Coach Simmons opened the 2018 season and his debut at Florida A&M with a 41-7 win over Fort Valley State, and will head to Troy on Saturday night. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. I want to apologize for missing the call earlier this morning.
Coach, we understand. Talk about last week's game and what stood out during the win over Fort Valley.
Well, before I do anything, once again, like I did last week, just want to congratulate Coach Washington again at A&T and everybody who won last week. Again, continue to highlight our great conference, and we're doing a lot of great things in HBCU football right now, so just happy to see that. But last week's game was a great opener for our team. It was a great atmosphere, over 20,000 fans. I think that's the first time since 2011 that we had over 20,000 fans when it wasn't homecoming. So again, it was a great atmosphere, great environment. We endured about a 45-minute lightning delay, and the fans stayed. They didn't leave. So it was a really, really electric environment for our guys, and great to see that. But the guys came out and played hard. That was the biggest thing that we came away with impressed, that they played extremely hard, competed for 4 quarters, overcame that adversity of the lightning storm, and was able to do enough to put the game out of reach. Did some really good things in all 3 phases. Blocked the field goal, had made them up 2 punts. Yahia Ali, set a school record with 6 field goals, and we covered pretty well on kickoff coverage. So I thought the special teams phases did what they needed to do, offensively and defensively. Had some standout performances, and those guys did well. And had a couple things that we got to correct, but the good thing is all of those things were correctable. A couple penalties on offense. We had 2 touchdowns called back because of penalties. And then we had a couple of missed tackles on defense that gave up big plays. But take those things away, I thought we had a pretty dominating performance.
And, Coach, 300 yards of rushing. Just talk about the collective effort from your running backs and offensive line.
Well, again, it starts up front. It starts up front with those big guys setting the attitude, and that's one thing that we challenged the offense on Thursday, was that we were going to be able to run the football, and then defensively we charged them with stopping the run, and we did both of those. We ran for close, like you say, close to 300 yards, held Fort Valley to negative yards rushing. So accomplished both of those goals, and that shows that you're a tough football team whenever you can establish the run and also stop the run on the other side. So happy for those guys. But the offensive line did a really good job of getting pushed up front. And we have a stable of running backs that we can roll about 4 or 5 guys in there and keep them all fresh. And they had fresh legs going into the second half and 4th quarter when we began to wear Fort Valley down. And a lot of those rushing yards came late, in big chunks. So happy to see that. Hopefully we can continue to sustain that. We'll need that as we get into tougher competition starting this week.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, it is the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. 1-4 to register for a question. And we have a question from the line of Ty Miller with Power News and Sports Radio Network. Please proceed with your question.
Hey, Coach Simmons, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Ty.
Coach, I had a chance to watch Neil Brown's press conference, and his team was soundly beaten this weekend, but they're celebrating the 68th championship team this weekend, a 68 team, and he had a lot of accolades for Florida A&M watching your tape against Fort Valley State. What do you know about Neil Brown as a coach, and what do you know about this Troy team?
Well, I've known Neil for a while. Again, we had plenty of clashes when he was offensive coordinator at Troy, when I was the position coach at Middle Tennessee State. So got to know him really well. We both worked for Tony Franklin, who we both patterned a lot of what we do offensively after. So a lot of similarities, really familiar with what he does. He's pretty familiar with what I do. And we have a great mutual respect for one another. And so I know he'll have his team ready to play. Of course, they're coming off of a loss, and I'm sure they'll be motivated to get a win under their belt and make the corrections, just like we had to make some corrections after our game. But, again, a ton of respect for Neil and the job that he's done there at Troy. Also, the defensive coordinator, Vic Koenig, was the defensive coordinator at Clemson when I was a grad assistant there. So know a lot of the guys on their staff. Byron Hartman is a guy that their D-line coach is a guy that graduated high school the same year Coach Jackson and I did, and we're good buddies. And so it'll be a lot of familiarity. So it'll come down to which team gets prepared the best this week, which team can learn from the mistakes they made last week and come to put a game together.
Coach, in terms of level of play, you go from one level to one level, so to speak, down to a level up now. So what difference will your players have to make in terms of adjusting to a little bit more speed from Troy?
Well, I think the biggest thing when you look at the different divisions, whether you're talking about Division II to FCS or FCS to FBS, is the scholarship numbers. And so whenever you have more scholarship numbers, typically you have more bodies to play with. And so you look at Fort Valley State last week, I thought they started to wear down because a lot of their players, a lot of their starters on offense and defense had to play special teams. And we have a few of our players doing the same thing. So the challenge for us, being on the road, you don't take nearly as many guys. And so there'll be some guys who have to play extra snaps on special teams that maybe didn't play that last week. And it'll come down to conditioning level, whether we're mentally tough enough, whether we're in good enough shape to be able to withstand their attacks for 4 quarters. And they're an up-tempo offense. They're an aggressive attacking style defense. So it's going to be a game that can potentially see about 90 plays from both offenses. So it can get pretty worn down in those type of football games, and we'll see if our depth will allow us to hold up and match them for 4 quarters.
And, Coach, normally it's been said by a lot of coaches that the biggest improvement takes place from week 1 to week 2. What are the most important things for your team to improve on this weekend?
Well, just to clean up the mistakes. We had, like I said, a couple of penalties on offense, 2 that took touchdowns off the board, 2 that were easily correctable. One was on a play they called us for a pick on where I thought the tight end tried to avoid his guy. We talked to him about the rules of whenever we're running those rub routes against man coverage. And so that's a fundamental thing that we'll have to clean up. And then we had a holding call by a tackle on an inside move that we had worked on all week. And so to be able to see those things on film, the missed tackles on defense, seeing guys not tackle with their heads up. So all those things that we've preached to them for 25 days of camp, now they get to see it in a real-life football game. That's when the biggest jump that you make. And then understanding the conditioning level that it takes to play a high-intensity game. So hopefully, like I said, we can make that big improvement from week 1 to week 2 because we'll definitely need it as we go into a hostile environment against a team that's a heavy favorite.
Okay, Coach, thank you a lot, and good luck this weekend.
Thanks, Ty.
And there are presently no further questions on the phone lines at this time.
And before we close out, Coach, just talk about the play of Derek Mayweather, led your team in tackles, and exactly what do you know about his journey to Florida A&M as he appears to be from Texas?
Well, Derek's a guy that you said is from Texas. He took the JUCO route, not JUCO, I'm sorry, took the prep school route, and went to prep school up in North Carolina, and the previous staff, found him. He came down last year and played the season last year, and then once we came into camp this year, he was a guy that really established himself pretty quickly as a very smart and savvy football player. He can play both our Mike and our stinger position. He's a tough guy. He brings that Texas toughness to us. And he flew around the field the other day and made a ton of plays for us, and we'll definitely need that. Again, we're going to play a team this week that's going to try to spread us out and get us in space, and we're going to need guys that can tackle in space. And like I said, he's shown that he's a guy that can do that, and we'll see if he can match up to their running backs and their tight ends and their multiple looks that they're going to try to give us to spread us out, and take advantage of things. So, but again, great young man, got a bright future for the Rattlers, only a sophomore, and hopefully he can continue to play at a high level.
Well, Coach, thanks for reshuffling your schedule to speak with us this morning, and we'll definitely speak with you again next week.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Florida A&M will head to Troy this Saturday in a 6 p.m. kickoff. The contest will be streamed live on ESPN+. Next up, we have fourth-year Bethune-Cookman head coach Terry Simmons. The Wildcats dropped their season opener at Tennessee State this past weekend and will open up at home on Saturday versus Virginia University of Lynchburg. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you, Ernest?
I'm good, Coach. Recap last week's game at Tennessee State as he had some early opportunities, but some key plays on third down by Tennessee State was the difference early in the first half.
It was, and we just have to continue to finish, and I talked about that a little bit last week. We were on the field a little bit too long for my liking defensively. We just have to turn over some more first downs and score a couple points offensively to give our defense a break. But, you can't take anything away from Coach Reed and his staff. Those guys did a great job preparing for us. They came out and made some plays. And I said that earlier in the week. The team that made the fewest mistakes and the most plays will win the football game, and that's exactly what happened. We had two busted coverages, which led to touchdowns, and you can't do that in a college football game playing a good football team. And they took advantage of a couple more mistakes that we made offensively and defensively. So when you have that kind of stuff happen, you're going to end up coming up short.
And you got a game at home this week, and obviously you want to put what happened Saturday behind you as fast as you can. Just talk about that process as you prepare for your home opener versus Virginia University of Lynchburg.
Well, we put it behind us. We came in on Sunday and watched the film and made our corrections. And as coaches, we had to reel back a little bit. And I think, we were trying to ask some of our guys to do a little bit too much. And coaches can be guilty of that at times. We just have to reel in a little bit, reel back, and help our players out a little bit more. So we watched the game, made the corrections, and we put it behind us. And we went out to practice on Sunday evening and got started on Lynchburg. And that's the game at hand. That's the next task in front of us. So we're not going to dwell on Tennessee State. It didn't come out like we wanted it to. But, at the end of the day, we got to learn from that and not allow it to beat us twice.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up calls for questions from the media.
Simmons. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to register a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. You will hear a 3-tone prompt to acknowledge your request. If your question has been answered and you would like to withdraw your registration, please press the 1 followed by the 3. If you are using a speakerphone, please lift your handset before entering your request. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, to register a phone question, it is the 1 followed by the 4. And there are no questions at this time.
Coach Sims, talk about Virginia University of Lynchburg as they open the season with the win. And so for what you've seen from them, what do you anticipate game plan-wise?
Well, we game plan-wise, we really are focusing on us. We're watching, their film, as we speak, and we're putting together a game plan. But I think, more than anything, we have to focus on us and settle our guys down and get them focused on that team, because they did have a win. It was, I think they beat a team that hadn't lost in 3 years or something like that. So they have some athletes. Don't know a whole lot about them right now. We've only been on them a couple days. But, I think we have to be ready and not take any team lightly. And, we can't overlook anyone. Getting beat 34-3, you can't really overlook anyone, and you can't look past anyone. So, we just have to make sure that we prepare and be on our A game on Saturday and have a great showing in front of our home crowd.
And who from Saturday's game stood out individually from your team on both sides of the ball?
Well, I would say defensively, Marcus Ford, one of our defensive ends, and Jerome Howard, a defensive tackle. Those guys played a great football game up front. And if you want to talk about guys on the back end, Joe Johnson, he played a decent game. Obviously we didn't play with 11 guys playing up to their potential, because, if we played up to the potential or what everyone feels like we are, I think the game would have been different. But those 3 guys on defense, they played a pretty steady game. Offensively, Akivas Williams, aside from his interception, I think he handled the offense well. Malik Jackson, a transfer we had from Florida State, he had a big catch. And Kevon Mitchell. Kevon came in and he did a fantastic job returning punts, and he had some key catches in the football game. So those guys, I think, stood out a little bit. We just have to get the rest of the team caught up with them and playing with the same intensity, and I think we'll get that this week.
And speaking of your quarterbacks, you had, looks like 9 people catch a reception, so they spread the ball out well. Just talk about your receiving unit, and looks like you had some depth starting the season off.
We do. We had to bring some junior college guys and a couple transfers in to try and fill the void, because losing Frank Brown and Jawil Davis and Jaquan Loomis, that's a lot of production. And losing Mike Jones in the backfield. So you have 4 guys that we have to replace that had a lot of production for this football team last year, and we had a lot of success, I think, recruiting. We just got to get everybody up to speed, and these guys are coming in now, and they're getting a hold of the offense, and they're learning how to maneuver in and out of our offense, and doing the things that Coach Glover and Coach Super want them to do. So I think you'll see a lot of our receivers for the weeks to come catching the ball. We want to try to spread it around each game as much as possible.
And lastly, Coach, and looking at your quarterback also, he had 88 yards. Obviously, a sack or whatever would take the average down, but looks like he's the dual threat that you pretty much would like to have in your offense. Can you just talk about his growth at his year 3 with him, and what you would like to see from him as he begins his junior year?
Well, he has had a lot of growth, and he did throw an interception on Saturday, but I think that the biggest piece of his game, or biggest part of his game right now that he has improved is his pocket presence and being able to sit in there and deliver the ball to the receivers. He's always had, the ability to make plays with his legs. He can throw the football, but I think he got a lot better over the spring and this summer with his decision making, and that's what we're looking for him. From him, the rest of the season is to continue to make great decisions and put our football team in situations where we can be successful and put points on the board.
Coach, thanks for taking time out and speaking with us this morning, and we will talk with you once again this time next week.
All right. Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome. Bethune-Cookman University is at home this week versus Virginia University of Lynchburg. Kickoff is set for 4 p.m., and the contest will be streamed live either on ESPN3 or ESPN+. We will now travel north to Dover, Delaware for our third call this morning as we welcome in first-year head coach of Delaware State University, Rod Milstead. The Hornets dropped their season opener at Buffalo this past weekend and will head to St. Francis on Saturday. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Ryan, how are you?
I'm good, Coach. Coach, recap last week's game at Buffalo as pretty much early in the game, the Bulls hit out some early 4th down conversions, which extended the drives or led directly to scores.
Yeah, we had some communication breakdowns on our defense. We're playing a lot of young guys this season, and they're still getting familiar with what we're doing and the schemes that we're running on defense. And with a team like Buffalo, who has been together for 3 or 4 years, they're well versed in what they do. And when they see a weakness, they attack it. And we responded later in the game by being able to make those adjustments. But we had some communication breakdowns, which afforded them the opportunity to score, especially with the ball on 4th down.
And you had a positive play from both your running backs. They both finished shy of 100 yards rushing. Just talk about their play and how would you like to handle them going forward from this point.
Well, that was a bright spot. Anytime that the scoreboard is not in your favor, it's a good time, it's a good teaching moment, and a good time for you to learn. So we did do some good things in the game. We were able to move the football on the ground. I was very proud of the way our running backs got a lot of positive yards at times and ran through tackles and really did what we've seen them do all spring and throughout the summer. So it's a very positive note, although the scoreboard wasn't in our favor. But we really want to get our passing game going. Had some opportunities, missed some balls, but we're going to focus in on the things that we didn't do well this week and be prepared to go against St. Francis on Saturday.
And before we go into the question-answer part, there were some familiar names I've seen on defense that had strong performances in Cavalcante, Selby, and Niebauer, but there was a freshman with the last name Bowman that had an impressive debut. Just talk about him and what he brings to your defense.
David Bowman is a special kid, special young man. David Bowman was the Defensive Player of the Year for the state of Delaware coming out of high school last year, and we were very, very fortunate to get him. Some people would say he's undersized, but you can't judge him by looking at his stature. You'd have to judge him by looking at his heart and what you see on film. He just played lights out for a true freshman to come in and to do the things that he was able to do against an FBS opponent. The young man is pretty special. He plays the hybrid, like a safety type linebacker, a young man for us. We call him the Hornet, and he just did a phenomenal job. I'm so looking forward to watching him grow remainder of this year, but also for the remainder of his career. He's going to be a special player in the Meac, and people need to mark that name David Bowman down in their history books because he's going to make history.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to register a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. You will hear a 3-tone prompt to acknowledge your request. If your question has been answered and you would like to withdraw your registration, please press the 1 followed by the 3. If you are using a speakerphone, please lift your handset before entering your request. Once again, it is the 1 followed by the 4 to register a question. And there appear to be no questions on the phone lines at this time.
Coach Milstead, talk about this week's opponent in St. Francis, and what have you seen from them that stands out?
Well, St. Francis just came off of a tough loss to Lehigh, so they're in the same boat that we're in. We both are eager for their first victory, but watching them on film, they're a very sound football team, offensively and defensively. Their main facet on offense, they want to run the ball, establish the run, but they do have a pretty good quarterback, and they want to get the ball out quickly to the edges. So we got to come out and play our best game. Can't turn the ball over like we did last week. Defensively, they're stout up front. They have a good linebacking core, and they field quickly. They try to limit you on the things that you do. But our game plan this week, of course, they're going to prepare for it. We're going to run the football. That's our main goal here at Delaware State. We're going to run the football and complement that by our airstrike game as well. So this week, we're going to prepare all facets of our game, and especially special teams. We got to win the special teams battle this week, and we want to be successful.
And speaking of special teams, and I know it's probably a position you would not like to use as much, but your punter looks like he's back in regular season form, averaged 46.5 yards per punt with a long of 52 yards. So just talk about the asset you have with him on the team.
Fidel Romo Martinez is phenomenal. He's a kid who works at his craft on a daily basis, and the same way he punts is the same way he does his thing in the classroom. He has the highest GPA, has never got a B, always gets an A. 4.0 kid in the classroom as well, wants to be a doctor when it's all said and done. So he's a very special talent for us. He was 4th at FCS last year, led the Meac in punting last year as well. So we would not like to use him. I told him when I first met him, I hope and pray sorry, we don't use you at all. But every time we've called on him, he's always answered the call and has done it at the highest level. So it's a blessing to have him. He was, of course, leads our special teams, captain, and he does it by example each and every week and each and every practice.
And, Coach, talk about this was your first game as head coach at Delaware State. Obviously, we know there's a lot of things going around. Well, did the emotions ever set in for a few minutes before kickoff, or you had that put aside and was strictly focused on Buffalo?
I was strictly focused in on Buffalo. It was funny. I was talking to one of my coaches before the game, and I said, it's crazy. I don't understand why I'm not nervous. He said, "You're not?" I said, "No, I'm not nervous. I'm not nervous. I'm just anxious to get started." I was very excited to give our guys an opportunity to play against an opponent besides ourselves, and that was my main focus. I was really relaxed, to be honest with you. I was concerned about that because I was questioning myself. Maybe you were just too relaxed at the time, but I wasn't. Everything had its time, had its place. It felt good to be back on the sidelines and watching our guys perform. And like I said, unfortunately, it's no fun when the scoreboard is not in your favor. But we have a lot of football left, and I had to take my hat off to Buffalo. That day, they were the better football team, and it showed on the scoreboard.
And before we close out, just talk about with getting ready for St. Francis in terms of, do you as a coach dwell pretty much in terms of the past game, or you put that behind you and quickly focus on the week at hand?
I've always, even as a player, I always tell people, don't look for me in my past because I no longer live there. So we don't even talk about it. We watch the film, we close it out, we move on to the next chapter. Our focus is St. Francis, and I told these guys from day one that when I got hired on February 1st, that's when the train left Dover, Delaware, and I was the conductor. And as we kept moving it along, we had several stops to make before we get to our ultimate goal. And one day we want to get down to Atlanta for the Celebration Bowl. So the train is headed in that direction. There's no reason why we should detour it, and that's what we're going to do. So all the guys are in agreement, and everyone's focused on St. Francis. There's nothing else that we can do with the University of Buffalo. Like I said, they were the better team that day, but we put it behind us and we move forward. So we're excited for our opportunity on Saturday, and we're eager to get the first win.
Well, Coach, continue to conduct that train, and we'll look forward to seeing you this time again next week, and good luck on Saturday as you head to St. Francis.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ryan.
Welcome. Delaware State University will face St. Francis on Saturday at 12 p.m. The game will be streamed live on NEC Front Row, and that's available from the Northeast Conference website. Now head to Washington, D.C. as our next call features second-year Howard University head coach Mike London. The Bison dropped a close matchup at Ohio last weekend and returns to the state of Ohio once again, as they will travel to Kent State on Saturday. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing good. Thank you.
Coach, as soon as you look at the box score, you see nearly 700 yards of offense by the Bison last week at Ohio as it came down to the wire. Recap last week's game against the Bobcats.
Yeah, extremely proud of the effort our guys gave. Ohio was the Meac champ, an FBS school that won their conference championship in back-to-back bowl games. We had to lead at halftime and, went back and forth there in the latter part of the game. We couldn't overcome 4 turnovers that we had, and 2 of them in the red zone area, which really, which kind of spoke of the day. But the efforts in terms of outgaining them, being very physical, playing against a really good FBS football team, our guys rose to the challenge and, had a chance with the last second, driving down the score until we threw an interception that ended the game. But again, the effort was great. Just excited about the young men that I have here. We played 14 freshmen on Saturday. Still a very young team that went out and competed. And so, we got to eliminate those turnovers that, again, would have given us a chance to make another statement in an upset in terms of point spreads and people's thoughts and opinions. But, what matters counts in the end on the scoreboard, and we came up short. But again, the effort I thought was a great effort for us, and now we got to, as you said, we go back up to the state of Ohio and play Kent State, whom we, last year, same thing. We were driving in the latter part of the fourth quarter with an opportunity to tie the score, with them. So we look forward to the rematch and the challenge of going back up there again.
And speaking of Kent State, pretty much the same team, but they're led by a new head coach. Just talk about what's the difference have you seen from this year and last year so far?
Yeah, obviously there's new schemes and systems, that are in place. They've done a good job with, they have a transfer quarterback, Willie, who's a sophomore quarterback, and last week for them, he was a guy that did everything for them. 270 yards throwing, 2 touchdowns. He's a dual threat guy because he rushed for 117 yards himself. So they got running backs, that have played, with them last year, and Rankin, number 11, and Matthews, number 2. Got good receivers, and so it's a team that's done a change in terms of what they do and how they do it. They're a spread you out offense. They try to manipulate spacing and get the ball, out to their receivers, and then if you overcompensate for that, then the quarterback will pull and he'll run. The defense is a defense that brings a lot of pressure. It's a 3-5 defense that does a good job of just getting lined up and playing. So it's their first home game. They were away at Illinois when they lost in the latter part of the game, and it'll be their first home game. But again, this is a team we played with, we played against last year, and was very competitive, and we look to be competitive again and go back up to the state of Ohio.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to register a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. You will hear a 3-tone prompt to acknowledge your request. If your question has been answered and you would like to withdraw your registration, please press the 1 followed by the 3. If you are using a speakerphone, please lift your handset before entering your request. One moment, please, for our first question. And our first question comes from the line of Donald Ware with Box to Row. Please proceed with your question.
Great. Good morning, Coach London. How you doing?
Doing great, Donald. How are you doing?
Doing really good. You've in your 3 FBS games as the head coach at Howard, you've won 1 and lost 2 close ones. So how does the coaching that you have had on the FBS level rub off on your guys, particularly with this being a younger team?
Yeah, Don, it's the approach of the mentality of the game. These kids nowadays, they go on the social media and they look at the different things, what's written, what's being said, and I've been on the other side when you're an FBS team and you look at it, and you're like, this is a tune-up game. This is a game we're gonna, sometimes FBS teams overlook you, or sometimes the FCS team rises to the level of being able to be competitive, of understanding that there's no pressure. It's just go out and play and perform, and having the ability, and then telling the coordinator, say, call the game as if that we got nothing to lose. Call the game aggressive. Just do some things that our players can also understand that we're in this thing to win it. And so when you adopt a philosophy and a mental state of mind in terms of mission possible, we can do this. What was great, Donald, coming out of it after the game and talking to Coach Soldiers and their strength coach, they said, man, you guys are well coached. You guys did a great job, and you got a good football team. And so, you want to win the games, and that's more of a statement. But at the same time, when you create a mental state in terms of we can play against anybody, then players gain confidence off of that. So we're not happy that we lost the game, and it's not like the silver lining thing type of thing. We want to win games like that, and that's the whole process and mindset that we have. So we'll continue to keep doing that as we move on to this next opponent and go throughout the season. But the mentality of the players, as you said, that we are young. About 67 of my players are either freshmen, redshirt freshmen, or true sophomores. And that's a credit to the coaches in recruiting and just the type of kid that we're trying to get into the program.
And then lastly, with Kalen and the performance that he had, which, I mean, if you look at the numbers, was really, really good, coming off a really good freshman year. It doesn't look like it's going to be any sophomore jinx for this young man. So can you talk about his play in both passing the football to his receivers who did well, and then also being able to run the football also?
Yeah, Kalen continues to do an excellent job of understanding the offense. I mean, to be able to throw for that many yards, you got to have some pretty good receivers. And Jaquez Ezra had over 200 yards reception, played a phenomenal game. And same thing with Kyle Anthony, a big target that went up and challenged, made some unbelievable catches. And then when you do that, then you have an opportunity for Kalen to run the ball, and then RPO, the run play action pass to come off of that. So his ability to understand the coverages and the pre-snap reads and the post-snap reads, which sometimes is difficult for young quarterbacks. You'll show him a pre-snap read, and then all of a sudden after the snap, defenses will rotate. Well, he did a really good job of reading those components and where to go with the ball. Now, obviously, two costly mistakes in terms of the picks. But again, we just hope he's going to continue to get better, and as he gets better, then we have more opportunities to win games.
I appreciate it, Coach. Good luck this week.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from the line of Ty Miller with Power News and Sports Radio Network. Please proceed with your question.
Coach Wanda, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Coach, you mentioned Kent State flashing and how well they played against Lovie Smith's Illinois team. And you mentioned Willie Barrett, and they have a new offense at Kent State. So what kind of changes have you seen that you will be presented with this year as opposed to when you played them last season?
Yeah, again, their offensive approach appears to be we're going to spread the field. They'll go 3-by-1 receivers, to the field, to the boundary. They'll make you have to account for spacing, and when you overplay it or they'll throw a bubble screen out there. If you keep walking a linebacker out, then Mr. Barrett does a good job in running the ball. So they've done a good job in terms of the approach of spreading the field and make you defense horizontal and vertical spacing, and sometimes that's hard to do. You can't get the right hats in the gaps, or you can't you can't stop a run, so you put a guy down, safety down to stop a run, and before you know it, then they pick the ball up and they throw a bubble screen or something out into the flats and make you have to defend the perimeter. So you can tell that they've changed from the philosophy of what they did last year into get the ball to their playmakers, the running backs, the wide receivers that we talked about, are guys that can make it happen in space. So that's a challenge, for us, is to make sure that we get proper spacing and understand, what they're trying to do to us. They're a hurry-up offense. They get lined up quickly, and if you're in the wrong look, then they'll run the play. If they see something, they'll call it at the line of scrimmage and change the play. You got to be ready for that. So it's a challenge, but at the same time, we play against our offense that does things very similar. So looking forward to this challenge.
Coach, any concerns about your team, being that they are a young bunch of players, any concern about them finishing strong in the fourth quarter because of what happened last year and what happened last week with 4 turnovers and the fact that this game could be another four-quarter match?
Yeah, you're always concerned about, the end result finishing, but at the same time, last year we won some games, last second, last play, and we finished. And so, confidence is gained through demonstrated performance. And, the goal going into this game against Kent State is to finish a game where we're on the positive ledger. you can't have 4 turnovers and then not have any. And so you can't give up a kickoff return for a touchdown. There was a third quarter scenario that they ran a touchdown back, and then we threw an interception down in the red zone, and they jumped up on us. So, being able to be smart about what we do and how we do it is critical. But, again, at the same time, finishing games, as you alluded to, is a critical component. And a lot of these players, were on this team last year, although young, still learned and saw what finishing a game means. So that's something we need to definitely concentrate on.
And, Coach, how much do you know about Sean Lewis? He's the youngest coach in FBS right now. So how much do you know about him and his background?
Don't know a whole lot about him. I know our offensive coordinator, Brendan Marion, knows about him. I know he's a guy that that's an innovative guy that has risen to the level of when everybody's talking about years ago who are the next young bright coaches that are out there, and obviously he comes to mind, and obviously Kent State made the commitment to him to run their program. So there's a lot of good coaches out there, and there's coaches that that have that it factor, and it appears that Kent State says they got the guy that's going to help them turn their program around. So it's the challenge of us going against what they do offensively and defensively. Like I said, they're kind of got a 3-man front. They do a couple things that they come off the edge, the corner blitz a lot. So they've done some really good things you watch on film. They had the lead early on in the game against Illinois, but coach is a good young coach, and again, the challenge is to go up on the road again, play them where we played them last year, and then finish this opportunity.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from the line of Luke Williams with Black College Sports Page. Please proceed with your question.
Thank you. Coach London, I noticed a very obvious hold when they scored the go-ahead touchdown, and a very obvious interference call against Kyle Anthony when you were driving to score. Without getting
you can't ask me that. Luke, you can't ask me that.
No. Listen to the question, Coach. I'm not going to ask you about that. I'm just going to ask, did you have to address your players with any frustration with the lack of those kind of calls? Did you have to address your team about that?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a level of frustration that occurs when you feel that things could have gone a certain way and they don't go your way. And you have to address that. You have to address the fact that, whether you're home or away, that our ability to stay laser focused on the things that we have to do in the latter and the waning moments of the game, they're critical. And so we can control. I mean, you can't control sometimes the outside elements and things that go on. But it's tough. It's tough. But we've been on the other side of games. I'm quite sure coaches who looked at the film said, "Hey, that guy held, or that guy did this or that." But as a young team, we this guy's got to understand that we can't let the frustration of perceived egregious calls or things that got called or didn't get called or should have got called. We can't let that captivate our minds and then go out on the field and not execute. So that was a learning experience there for a lot of young guys, and just understanding that that the ability to execute down the end is critical, and control what we can control, and then let the chips fall where they may.
The other thing, Coach, you talked about bright young minds and bright young coaches. Your offensive coordinator, I think, is doing a heck of a job in terms of utilizing the weapons that you have. Talk a little bit about his development, how you got him, so to speak, and what he does well for you so far.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's a great observation. I think Brendan Marion, I knew him when he was a high school coach in Pennsylvania, and I was at Virginia, and he would bring his team down, to our 7-on-7s, and and said at that point, that one day probably the two of us are going to I was going to hire him. And it's amazing. God has a plan and purpose for a lot of things, and it just so happened that when I got here last year, that he was coaching in a small college, and was able to offer the job and him accept it and bring that style of offense that allows a player like Kalen Newton to really blossom. The RPO part of it, the up-paced tempo, the affecting vertical space and horizontal space. He's done a really good job of that, and he's kind of a Gus Malzahn type of prototype as well. So Brent's done a great job with our offense, with Kalen, our quarterback, and our staff, our offensive staff. They work well together. Our entire staff works well together. But having a good young mind, good young offensive coordinator has been very beneficial. He's going to be a head coach one day, for sure.
Our next question comes from the line of Trevin A. Jones with Howard University Radio. Please proceed.
Coach London, how you doing today, Coach?
Trevor, doing good. How you doing?
Always good talking to you. Coach, one question, because I know we're running short on time probably at this point. 645 yards of total offense. Talk about the maturation of Big Baby. I'm talking about James Holman, the center. I think he may be the only returning offensive lineman that got a lot of playing time last year. Talk about his maturation, how good you're feeling about him, and how pivotal he will be moving forward the rest of the season.
Yeah, you did like I did, Trevor. I don't call him Big Baby anymore. I call him James Holman, because he's past that state. But named co-offensive lineman of the conference. He is the only guy that played for us consistently last year. So when you look at the rest of the guys that are around him, we got young guys there. But James has done a great job being our center, the guy that calls out the protection. He's emerged as a leader on our football team. He's a veteran, that type of thing. So his mindset and the stability that he gives to the young players that he's surrounded by has been something that's been outstanding. So we hope he continues to keep leading by example and continues to keep having good games, where he can be recognized and show that that his leadership does matter. But I appreciate you acknowledging that, because more than anything else, James Holman is a great young man.
Coach London, thanks for speaking with us this morning, and good luck as you head back to Ohio this week as you'll face Kent State.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Our university is back in the state of Ohio as they'll face Kent State on Saturday at 3 p.m. The game will be streamed live on ESPN+. We are now joined by Norfolk State University head coach Latrell Scott. The Spartans kicked off the season this past Saturday with the win over Virginia State in the annual Labor Day Classic, and will remain at home as they will host James Madison on Saturday. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning, Ryan. How about yourself?
I'm good, Coach. Talk about last week's win as your defense held ground early on before the offense got its groove going in the second half.
Well, we're proud of the guys for being able to come out and be competitive. Anytime you have the opportunity to win at home in front of a great crowd. I think we had almost 20,000 people here, so great support from both schools and the local community. But, as you said, our defense came out and gave up a touchdown early and pretty much buckled down from there on. And offensively, we had some opportunities that we missed in the red zone in the first half that we came back and capitalized on in the second half. I think we ran the ball obviously much better in the second half and didn't have to throw it very much. So anytime you can run the ball and run, similar plays on consecutive play calls, I think you're doing something pretty positive. But the reward that we get for winning last week is that we get the number 2 team in the country at home this week.
And, Coach, speaking of that, talk about James Madison and what to expect.
Well, I think you can expect quality football. I spent time at James Madison during my career, and I know how important football is to JMU and their administration. And they put a lot into it, financially, and you see the product that they put on the field. They're big, they're fast, they're well disciplined on both sides of the football. They don't make a ton of mistakes, and if you can go toe to toe with an ACC program, you're doing something pretty special.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to register a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. You will hear a 3-tone prompt to acknowledge your request. If your question has been answered and you would like to withdraw your registration, please press the 1 followed by the 3. If you are using a speakerphone, please lift your handset before entering your request. And our first question comes from the line of Lutz Williams. Please proceed with your question.
Good morning, Coach Scott. How you doing?
Good, Lou. How about yourself?
Not bad. Congratulations on the win. I saw that you played another quarterback other than Pough. Did he get hurt, or what happened with that?
Pough had a situation where he was disqualified from the game. Made a bad decision, so we moved on and played DeAndre, and DeAndre came in through a touchdown pass and finished the game for us.
Can you get into details about what he actually did? Did he say something to an official, or?
I don't really want to get into it, Luke, because it's an official thing. But I think if you go out there and you kind of watch some video, you can see what they disqualified him for. But I'm not really here to question what happened. But I think the officials were justified in their decision, though.
What does that do for him against James Madison? Is he able to play against James Madison?
I don't know at this time, obviously, because there's an NCAA rule and there's a Meac rule, so we're kind of checking into seeing exactly what it is. But if he's unable to play, we have total confidence in DeAndre Thomas. Came in and finished the game for us and did a tremendous job.
What did the defense do after giving up that early score? Was it a particular adjustment that you had to make that allowed the team to kind of shut them down maybe for the rest of the game?
I think it was just settling down. Those guys come out, they do a great job with their tempo, and we can simulate tempo as much as we want. In the training camp phases of practice, but they came out and put together a solid drive. Our kids didn't panic. We didn't change our defense. We got guys settled down, and once they settled in, they're able to get stops and create 3 turnovers. If you get 3 turnovers from your defense, you should be pretty productive on offense.
Talk a little bit about how well you think the running game performed. I see Savage had a very nice afternoon. I know that's one of the things that you've been needing and looking for. How did they perform on Saturday?
Well, we didn't run it particularly well in the first half, and in years past we may have gone away from that. But again, with the changes that we made within our offensive line situation, we have a ton of confidence in those guys and to be able to see our guys come out and essentially run the ball. We only threw the ball 4 times, with the second quarterback in the game. So, for us to be able to come out and have 3 possessions where you don't throw the ball, you can just run the ball down the field. That gives you a lot of optimism. Obviously, we're going to be playing against different people this week, but to have the ability to run the football makes the play caller's job a lot easier.
Thanks, Coach. Good luck on Saturday.
Thank you.
Coach Scott, thanks again for calling in this morning, and we will look forward to speaking with you again this time next week.
Okay, Ryan. Thanks. Take care.
You too. Norfolk State is back at home this week, and they will host James Madison. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m., and the game will be streamed live on ESPN3 or ESPN+. We're now joined by Savannah State University head coach Erik Raeburn. Savannah State dropped its season opener at Alabama Birmingham last week and will head south to face the University of Miami on Saturday. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, Coach. Talk about last week's game versus UAB as you had some early opportunities due to plays on defense and special teams.
Yeah, I thought we played well through most of the first half. I think it was 7-0 with about 8 minutes to go in the half, and then we turned the ball over twice. You had a slew of penalties on defense, and gave them 21 points in the final 8 minutes of the half, and never really recovered from that. So happy with the effort that we gave, particularly through the first quarter and a half, but disappointed that once we made one big mistake things just kind of snowballed on us and got away from us.
Thanks, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to register a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. That is the 1-4 to register for a phone question. And our first question comes from the line of Tim Reynolds with Associated Press. Please proceed with your question.
Good morning, Coach. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Coach, obviously, there's a need to play these sorts of games, obviously, for the bottom line and that sort of thing. I'm curious, with the drop to D2 coming, is this the last one of these sorts of games that's in the plans for Savannah State going forward?
Yes. Once you drop to D2, you don't have enough scholarships for the FBS schools to count you towards bowl eligibility, so they don't pay you to come and play anymore.
I just didn't know if there were still contracts or something like that. I didn't know if there were, because I didn't know if there were still deals still in place.
Actually, we had a contract, a 3-year deal with Miami, but we'll only play the 1-year deal, and it was for 2020 and 2022, so they have time to find a replacement that they could count towards their bowl eligibility.
Outside of the financial benefit, Coach, I know it's exciting, I'm sure, for the kids to come down and play in a stadium where they've had Super Bowls and that sort of thing, but the reality is, obviously it's a pretty big mountain for these kids, obviously, to tackle in these games. What do you hope to get out of something like this? What are the things that you're hoping can be a springboard for Week 3 and beyond for you guys?
Yeah, I guess I hope they have a great experience. Like you said, getting to play in an incredible stadium with where NFL teams line up and play and that type of thing. So I hope the experience is good from that standpoint, and then we're hoping that playing against that level of competition, that when we get into the conference, they'll feel like things are happening slower for them than they did these first 2 weeks. So I guess that's best case scenario. Like you said, this is a tough task for us to go play Miami, and if it wasn't for the financial need, we definitely wouldn't do it. But hopefully our guys have a great experience and enjoy the trip and show improvement from last week, and hopefully be better prepared, to start playing the top teams in the Meac.
And finally, Coach, what sort of jumped off the film from Sunday night when you saw the Miami LSU tape?
Well, their front seven on defense, is incredibly impressive. We're totally mismatched there. So that'll be a struggle for us. We just got to try and do our best to take good care of the football and eliminate our penalties, so we're not shooting ourselves in the foot. But we'll have a hard time, keeping those guys blocked. They're really athletic and fast and physical up front. And then from an offensive standpoint, we don't have the pass rush and the physicalness of the LSU D line. So we're worried about being able to improve our run defense and try to slow down their running game, and then when they do decide to pass, generate a pass rush. So I think that'll be the biggest challenge for us. That you saw Sunday night.
Thanks, Coach. Safe travels down here.
Thank you.
And there are no further questions on the phone lines at this time.
Coach Raeburn, thanks again for calling this morning, and we will speak with you once again this time next week.
Thank you.
Savannah State will head to the University of Miami on Saturday evening. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m. and some contests will be shown live on ACC Network Extra. Our next call takes us to Orangeburg, South Carolina, as we welcome in head coach Buddy Pough of South Carolina State. The Bulldogs will face the University of Central Florida on Saturday at 6 p.m. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good. Talk about last week's game at Georgia Southern and what did you see from film study that stood out?
Well, we did play at Georgia Southern this past Saturday. We go down and play fairly decent on defense for actually most of the game. We turned the football over and gave them a couple short fields there toward the end of the first half. I think it was like 6-0 into the second quarter. And, we give them a turnover two and give them a score and a field goal. Defense got some stops in there, and then we come out the second half and they get it down and score again. We take it and drive 19 plays and get it in, and then, of course, at that point, it was getting close to the end, and, we ended up getting beaten up, fairly decently. But, it's an opportunity for us to create a sense of urgency for our kids in the off season that we, can work toward. And, we got these first two games that we're going through with the guaranteed / bowl style kinds of teams, and we're getting through that now. We get through this week, we get into our conference race, and hopefully, at that point, we will have created something that can compete with the rest of our league.
And with a team with as much youth as you have, and so at this point and during your career, do you focus so much on what took place last week, or you try to focus on the fundamentals and making sure they're ready to compete the next week?
Yeah, we're doing a little bit of both, Ryan. We need to continue to develop this team. We played, I think, maybe 14 freshmen and redshirt freshmen, in this game. It's a little bit unusual for us. We generally are an older, more experienced football team, and, because we're changing our offense around some and, got some new coaches on staff, we want to try to, maybe put some things in place a little bit different than where we've been in the past. And we're trying to find some offense. We didn't do very good this past Saturday, and, that's a big mission for us at this point, to see if we can figure out, how to generate some more offense, because we think we're fairly decent on defense, and, if that be the case, then, then we got to find some offense. We'll take the little bit of strength that we do have in our defense out because of the fact that we play them too many snaps.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to register a phone question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. The 1-4 to register for a question. And there appear to be no questions at this time.
Thank you.
Coach, this week you got UCF, and everyone who follows college football knows what they did last season. Just talk about what they bring to the table personnel-wise.
Well, they can run all over the place, Ryan. They're highly skilled also. They got this quarterback, this Milton guy who can throw it and run it. He's an all-around kind of athletic guy. He's the hardest guy in probably the sport to find, guy that can run like a running back and throw like a quarterback. So, he's got all of the tools that way. And then, they got wide receivers. They got 3 or 4 of them that, I can't tell them apart. They all look like they flying and making all kinds of spectacular catches and stuff. And they can run the football. And then, you think that those teams, from down there, mostly high-flying, offensive kind of attack kind of teams. But, this team really plays good on defense. And I think Randy Shannon, their defensive coordinator, has got them, really playing with a lot of excitement, enthusiasm. And, they got all of the parts there. I think you remember the guy last year that was the top-round draft choice that was, one of the kids that had the fantastic numbers at the combine. I think they got lots more kind of similar to him in their, in their depth chart. So they got, all of the parts to be one of the top teams in the in the country. I think they're ranked 22 in one poll and maybe 21 in another. And, they are a top 25 football team. I think that kind of says it all.
And before we close out, you mentioned your player, your defense. You had 8 tackles for loss last week. So just talk about the type of defense you have so far and what is their style?
Well, it's the prototypical South Carolina State defense. We're a little bit young. We don't have quite the depth in the secondary that we've had, and we're trying to develop that depth. One of the neat things about this early part of the year is that we can play. We got a bunch of freshmen and sophomores, and we've redshirted some of the freshmen and have not read some of the sophomores. What we'd like to try to do is see if we can use this new rule to play as many guys as we can early to maybe see if we can get some real help out of some of those guys. So we probably travel a few more guys than we ordinarily would because of the fact that we're trying to, create some depth in that defense. If we can get some bodies that we can actually rotate in there, then I think you give them a chance to be the attacking style kind of defense that we used to seeing here at South Carolina State.
And just talk about the running backs also. Some new names people might maybe not be familiar with. Just talk about what you expect out of them.
Well, Deshaun James started for us, and he played a good bit for us last year. LeBron Morris is back, but the guy who had the best day for us was Omar Cummins, a redshirt freshman from down at Buford, South Carolina, who comes from one of these weightlifting families. They got one of the younger brothers who's like a world champion weightlifting kind of guy. I think they weightlift and wrestle most of their lives. So, he's a tough little guy. He ain't very big, but he can get after you. And, he seems to be a guy that we can, maybe design some things around and try to see if we can get going some. But, running back wise, we got a bunch of them. What we got to do is figure out how to block for them a little bit and figure out how to maybe design some things that will give them an opportunity to show their talents the way that we think they can be shown.
Well, Coach, thanks again for talking with us this morning, and we will speak with you this time again next Tuesday.
Yeah, Ryan, we'll be back. Yeah, and looking forward to seeing you.
Same here, Coach. South Carolina head to Orlando, Florida to face UCF on Saturday. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m., and the contest will be shown live on ESPN3. Now move on to Greensboro, North Carolina, as North Carolina A&T State head coach Sam Washington joins us this morning. The Aggies took an extra day to get on the field, and they defeated East Carolina this weekend, which marks the 3rd straight season they've claimed to win over an FBS opponent. The Aggies will open up at home on Saturday, as they will host Gardner-Webb of the Big South Conference. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you, Ryan.
Coach, for the 2nd straight week, you had the eyes of HBCU football on you, and then once again, there was a shortage of heart medicine at the local pharmacy because it came down to the end. So just talk about the big win over ECU, and what does this do for your program at this point?
Let me say first, there is a God. We've been blessed, with a lot of things. I thought the kids played hard, and I thought that's what really made the difference. They went out there and played with the will to win, and they felt that way from the moment we kicked the ball off until the last whistle blew. And I think ultimately that was the difference. Of course, we went through a lot of adversity on Saturday night before we called it, going on and off the field. That was tough. And they hung in there mentally, and I'm just happy, to be a part of this.
And also this week you have Gardner-Webb, and once again, like we talked last week, everybody's patting you on the back and, probably sending telegrams to the house. So just talk about putting this game behind you and getting focused on another tough opponent coming to town this week.
Absolutely. They put up 52 points last week, and they're a very capable team, well coached, and they play hard. And They're fundamentally sound. They don't do things to shoot themselves in the foot. So we're going to have to be very sound. As far as getting off this cloud, we as coaches are going to have to be diligent. And I like to think that we start over each week. Each week is a new week, and we're going to put our best foot forward.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to register a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. You will hear a 3-tone prompt to acknowledge your request. If your question has been answered and you would like to withdraw your registration, please press the 1 followed by the 3. If you are using a speakerphone, please lift your handset before entering your request. And we do have a question from the line of Lute Williams with Black College Sports Page. Please proceed with your question.
Good morning, Coach Washington. How you feel?
I'm doing well, Luke. How are you?
Doing fine. I know we talked a little bit about it at the press conference yesterday, but what Lamar went out of the game, I think they said either his hand was stepped on or he had cramps on his right hand. What kind of condition is he in right now? And do you think he'll be available on Saturday?
Oh, absolutely. The injury report indicated that he will be at practice today, so hopefully it's very minor, and he'll be able to take some snaps and throw the ball around a little bit today in practice.
Coach, your defense has really stepped up in those 2 games. I know Coach Broadway used to always say, we stopped the run. If you're going to beat us throwing the ball, good luck with that. Talk about how well your defense has played and why has it played so well. I had a talk with Julian McKnight. He talked about that you guys have a lot of guys on defense who can run. How does that factor into how good they are on the defensive side?
That is a major factor for us, but I think what it is more so would be we have 8 returning guys, so we have a few guys out there, quite a few guys playing that know the system, know the effort that's required, know the little stuff, the motion adjustments, recognition, play recognition, and we coach effort. We spend a lot of time, encouraging and forcing, kids to run to the football, and it happened to work for us.
Thanks, Coach. Good luck Saturday.
Thank you.
And there are no further questions at this time.
Coach, before we go, just talk about playing at home for the first time this season and the expectations that you will face in terms of keeping the home crowd happy.
Oh, well, we're excited to play at home. Being on the road the first 2 games, that is tough within itself. And so we get to showcase our talents, in front of our home crowd. And we hope to have a big turnout, a lot of Aggies, cheering us on and have fun. I think we have a very worthy opponent. As I stated before, they scored 52 points this past week. And they have a coaching staff that know exactly what they're doing, what they do well, what they don't do well. They kind of keep themselves out of harm's way. And that makes for a very challenging ball game.
And late in the game last week, I wanted to ask, several times the ECU D-line turned the pressure up, and you had to punt the ball back over to ECU, but you just guys kept making plays, and it literally came down to the very last play of the game. Just talk about those last 2 drives, or specifically the last drive where you pretty much, your team laid everything out on the line to pull that game out.
Absolutely. I thought the key was not to hit the panic button, and I think that's what they did best. They say very poised, and they executed decent, well enough to win. Of course, we'd like to have did some things better, but again, that will to win and knowing how to win. And I think we rehearsed some of those situations that we found ourselves in on a weekly basis, and it showed up at the right time.
And speaking of the right time, Mac McCain, and he's all over the field. And he was the defensive player of the week, 11 tackles, 100-yard kick. But you had him as a freshman and he red-shirted. Just talk about what have you seen from him since you've been able to coach him?
That kid can be amazing, honestly. His instincts, second to bar none. He has a feel for that position, and he's still learning, how to play it. He hasn't perfected yet, but I think he's on a very good track, and if he continue to work hard, the sky's the limit for him. Week 1 wasn't so good. I thought he got away from a lot of the fundamentals and technique that we teach, and it showed. So last week in practice, we went back to the basics and with him, and it seemed to have paid off.
Well, Coach, he sound like a young Sam Washington.
I've been asked that before. Not yet. But potentially, you can be better than I was.
Well, we'll leave it right there, Coach. That's a lot. That says a lot. Thank you, right. And good luck. And we will talk with you again this time next week.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. North Carolina A&T State will return home this weekend to face Gardner-Webb University. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m. and the contest will be shown on either ESPN3 or ESPN+. Hey, we're now joined by North Carolina Central University head coach Granville Eastman. The Eagles dropped their season opener in the Meac Flag Challenge this past Sunday and are back in action this Saturday versus St. Augustine's. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just talk about Sunday's season opener as you had a chance to evaluate the game and what stood out from the contest.
Yeah, we had a chance to go back and look at the film. I think hindsight basically showed what I thought of some first game jitters that we'd hoped to kind of stay clear of. Indicative by some sloppy play. At times, just some substitution things that we had repped. Thought we were a little, better than that. And, the missed tacklings on the defensive side of the ball was a little too much for what we had anticipated. Offensively, I thought we did a lot of things well. The only thing I wish we had done is extended a few more drives, maybe keep the defense off the field a little longer. But some things that, we had to take responsibility for that on the defense side. I think a big plus was I thought our special teams played well, certainly played well enough for us to win the game. And, we have some new specialists up there, and there's a lot of bright spots there. Elijah Sonny Richardson stepped up and did a good job in handling returns, punt returns for us and whatnot. And so there's some things to build on there. Overall, was very encouraged by their fighting spirit. We've always been a resilient bunch. There was a time there for a while where we could have really just things could have gone from bad to worse. And to our young people's credit, they responded the right way, got us back in the game. And unfortunately, we couldn't get our intensity and our execution to a higher level for what it was going to take to win the game.
And speaking of the fight your team displayed, when you cut it to only 2 points, what was your message to them from that point to let them know, hey, this is a whole new game now, and from that point?
Well, the message was really before that. Our chancellor came in, Chancellor Akanle. He had a few good, spirited words about just believing in them at halftime. I think they felt that in the coaches, and I think they felt that amongst themselves. And so, with that type of inspiration, it went out, got some breaks, made our own breaks, and back in the game. And I think we were really at that point 2 points down. We were really waiting on one play, and I think it revealed some things. You got to go and make those plays. We had our opportunities while the game was still in the bounds. Don't want to
think what we did was we waited for a play or two, as opposed to just pursuing ahead and making a play. And I think that was the difference. At that point, it wasn't anything really to be said. Everyone was on the same page. It was just a matter of somebody stepping up and getting that play to hopefully put us in the lead and to see how we could play from there.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for a question from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to register a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. The 1-4 to register for a question. And we do have a question from the line of Luke Williams with Black College Sports Page. Please proceed with your question.
Good afternoon, Coach.
Hey, good afternoon.
Because the kid for Prairie View ran for obviously a ton of yards. I think 240 plus yards. Obviously, he's very elusive and very quick. What was it particularly in terms of the scheme that you were running, or what you didn't execute that allowed him to have so many? I think he had a 68-yard run, a 50-yard touchdown, and I can understand that he's very good. But what would you think that the guys didn't do that allowed him to have that kind of day?
Our gap fits. That's not how we play defense. And I'll be surprised if we play like that again. Certainly my time here this year. Just our gap fits. It was unexpected. We had some young people up inside, jumping out of gaps, doing some things that were just uncharacteristic for us. And what it did was it really applied a lot of pressure on the second level. I think at the second, third level, the secondary, I think early in the game we didn't tackle well in the open field, and then as the game got on we got a little better at that. So you saw missed tackles, but the initial burst of where those holes were created was because of the guys not being in their gaps, discipline, not playing good technique, some alignment issues, things that were really. Unfortunately for us, typical of first game, some young redshirt sophomore players playing in those positions that we didn't see that happening, and it did. And give Prairie View credit too, because they came off the ball and they were a factor in making some of those things happen too.
Coach, now you being a guy on the defensive side of the ball, how much were you unable to focus as much as you would have had you been, just the coordinator? How did you adjust to that in terms of sitting in the main seat, so to speak, in that first game?
Well, it was a great experience. I'll tell you what has happened to me. Here's, again, I embrace this process every step, every day, every minute of it, because that's how I'm growing. I don't believe there's any football drop off. In terms of what we do or did on Saturday, I will take some responsibility. As I told the team, I thought we played a little too conservative in fear of what Tristan Wallace was able to do the previous game and his ability, and that took us away from doing some things that we like to do defensively. And I need to stay a little more true to that, to give our young people the confidence on the field that they're used to. So that was my fault. Being the head coach, that was not a factor in my decision making. I would have probably done that even though I was just a defensive coordinator. What I have to work on is I still coach a position, and so administratively and things that to make sure we communicate with our DBs, the things, the safeties that they need to do off the field, and things that affect football as well, to be in constant communication with them. Those are things that I have to constantly be reminded of, because as head coaching duties come on, but in the field of play, getting ready for a game, making calls, that was not a factor.
Your team obviously appeared to wake up in the second half, obviously, when you cut it to 2 points. And it seemed like the momentum stopped after you got there, because I think they ended up driving right back down the field after that. What went on during that period, you think, that kind of changed the momentum back in their favor?
Well, two things. I think it was demonstrated throughout the game, certainly in the beginning and the closing, that Prairie View just wanted it more. I think 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times, that ball was on the ground. And we're accustomed to being the first of the football and creating turnovers and getting the ball back. We pride ourselves on that. Very rarely that we cause 3 or 4 fumbles and not get at least half of those back. That shows you how hungry they were, determined even with their mistakes to persevere and win the football game. I think that's one thing. I think that I think that I said it earlier. It just seemed like even though we clawed our way back in the game, that we were kind of waiting for somebody on our side to step up and make a play, and nobody ever did. It's almost like we kind of forgot what got us back in the game, and whereby Prairie View had made a decision on there that they were going to go out, and they were going to they were going to go out and get back on top of us. And I think it was a matter of wills and mindset. We've been talking as a coaching staff, why that happened. We think we have some ideas I'm not going to share right now, but we're definitely going to work to correct that.
Thanks, Coach, for the answers. And this is a little final question about Cotwell, Chauncey's play at quarterback. What do you think about how he performed Saturday?
Well, he has some decent stats, and I thought Chauncey played well. We think that he's got a much higher ceiling that he has to get to. And I think, as we go on, he's going to have to come on and play to a level that, we think he's capable of. I think sometimes, quarterbacks get too much, credit, and they get too much blame. So I'm going to try and stay away from that. But, again, I thought he played well. We felt that there were some little things, some subtle things that he could have done in the passing game that he'd been coached up to do that could have really have exposed some things and give us better opportunities. And for whatever reason, that never materialized. So I'm encouraged that there's a better game ahead because his stats and everything will read that it was good, but we think he can play much better.
Thanks for the answers, Coach. Good luck on Saturday.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
And there are presently no further questions on the phone lines.
Coach, thanks again for speaking with us this morning, and we will speak with you once again this time next week. We're now joined by Warrior State University head coach Ernest Jones. The Bears dropped their season opener this past week versus Towson and head on the road to face the University of Akron on Saturday. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I'm good, Coach. Talk about last Saturday's game as the most noticeable difference in the stats was a pair of first-half turnovers, which shifted the momentum back to Towson.
You hit it right on the head. I mean, we thought we were playing a really pretty good football game early on. We were following the game plan. Things were going according to what we thought, and then we drew up a play that we thought would be able to hit our tight end running wide open up the middle of the field, and he was running wide open, and our quarterback threw the ball to the guy who was supposed to be covering him, and that turned the momentum of our game a little bit. And then probably a series or two later, we pushing the ball up the field, and our tailback puts the ball on the ground. And you can't win football games turning the football over. We say around here the football is the program, and we did not protect the program.
And this week you head to Akron. So what is going to be your focus as you prepare to step up in class in terms of FBS opponent?
Absolutely. First thing we got to do is just believe in our process and believe in who we are and continue to try to improve on the things that we're putting in front of them. One of the things that happened in this game is we told our kids that this was going to happen per film study, and they have to believe us. We're going to tell them the same thing this week, what's going to happen versus Akron in film study, and I think our team has to go out there and execute according to what we're telling them to do, and I think we'll be all right.
And then individually, who stood out that you saw from your game film study?
From an offensive standpoint, that quarterback, man, he's something else. Cato Nelson, he's a special player. He can beat you with his feet and he can beat you with his arms. So he's going to have to be a guy that we have to pay attention to. And I thought their entire offensive line, they're big, veteran guys. They're physical, look like they're pretty strong. So I think they're going to have a really, really good run game and try to run the football out a little bit. And then to be quite honest, I was impressed with their wide receivers, the speed of them. They're fast. They have really, really good hands. They can catch the ball. So
offensively, I think they got a really, really good squad over there offensively. Defensively, I like that secondary. I don't know that we could find a weak link in that secondary. It's going to be pretty difficult to try to throw the football against them, but we're going to try to do it anyway. And then I like that defensive lineman, number 9, Jamal Davis. I thought he was a special player over there at defensive end. So they got some special players over there, and it's going to be a bit of a challenge for us, but we're going to be up for it.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to register for a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. And we have a question from the line of Stephen Thompson with HBCU Game Day. Please proceed with your question.
Hey, Coach, how's everything?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
Pretty good, sir. So I was at the game on Saturday, and after the muff punt by Towson, your kicker recovered it for a touchdown. Now, he did come off this field a little bit slow. Do you have an injury update on your kicker?
Yeah, I haven't gotten the final on him yet. He's still, because of the holiday, he got to see our doctor. I believe it's today, so I don't have an update on him as of yet. No.
Gotcha. Appreciate it, Coach.
Yes, sir.
And there are no further questions at this time.
Coach, one thing,
yes,
and I don't know if a lot of people really notice, you've been around a lot of programs at the highest level, and you've been the head coach at some high-profile places before. Just talk about how do you put that experience and let your team know that everything you're saying, you've seen it from their perspective as a player, because you played with Steve McNair, and also the perspective as a coach, as you coach, obviously, with some of the biggest names in college football.
Yes, and that's definitely a big part of trying to change the culture, trying to get some credibility in the things that you're saying. And what I'm doing is, again, when we're watching film study, I'm in there with, offense and defense talking about this is what they do, this is what you're going to see on Saturday. And then when it happens, we have to come back and show it to them again. This is exactly what we told you they would do. Because one of the things that's different at this level and those levels is film study is really, really big. And those players at the higher levels really believe in what they see on film. So trying to get our guys to believe in what they see on film and believe in what we're telling them as coaches, that's the difference. But I do believe that this team believes, they know my background and they believe in what I'm doing, which is why the culture is changing. But that's the most difficult part. If we can just add the trust that what we're telling you is true and what you're seeing on film, they're really going to do. That's the biggest difference to me.
And obviously, Rico Kennedy had a strong game at linebacker, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. But the new name, Damari Whitaker, led the team in tackles and also had a sack. Talk about his performance and who is he?
Yeah, we're definitely happy to get Damari back. Damari didn't play with us a year ago, and he sat out a year, and now he's back this year. He's a special linebacker. I've got to believe he'll be one of the better inside linebackers, if not linebackers in general, in the conference. He's a big physical kid from D.C. He can play. He can run. He loves to hit. He can cover a slot receiver. So you'll hear a lot about him. And Rico Kennedy is special. Very difficult to defend. He knows how to use his size and athleticism to get around defenders. So he'll be in the backfield a lot this year, making tackles in the backfield, sacks, tackles for losses, etc. But expect to see Damari Whitaker a lot. We like him in the middle of our defense.
And hold on one more second, Coach. We'll try to see if we have any more questions coming in.
Yes, sir.
Once again, to register a phone question, it is the 1 followed by the 4. And there are no questions at this time on the phone lines.
Okay. And before we close out, Coach, just talk about getting ready and putting last week's game behind you. Obviously, it was an emotional game with a local rivalry, and looking forward to heading to Akron.
Well, as our teams, we experienced the 24-hour rule. 24 hours is over. We came back, then we assessed the game. We assessed what we did well and what we didn't do well, and we moved on to Akron. I mean, we challenged our players. A lot of these guys say they want to play Division I FBS football. Well, here you go. You got a chance to go try to win your one-on-one matchup against an FBS football player so you can evaluate yourself individually, and now we can evaluate ourselves as a team and as a program going up against the FBS program. So we're pretty excited here. We had a really good practice on yesterday and today in preparation there. You wouldn't know that the football team lost the game in regards to the way that they are preparing. So we know we lost, but we've moved on, and we're trying to get ourselves ready for Akron, because at the end of the day, we want to win a Meac Conference championship, and we know that we got to get better week after week leading up into conference play.
Coach, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking time out, and we will definitely speak with you this time next week.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Oregon State University will head up to Akron, Ohio, to face Akron University on Saturday. Kickoff is set for 3:30 p.m., and the contest will be streamed live on ESPN